It's July, and you think you missed your chance to plant. My grandfather would have laughed at that. So would his grandfather. Because to my people, July isn't the end of the season, it's a second beginning. Today I'll show you 3 crops you can still plant this summer, and I'll tell you why my family has planted them exactly this way for generations. Stick with me. These aren't tricks from a seed catalog. This is knowledge that was handed down, hand to hand, father to son. So let's start with the question everyone asks. Why isn't it too late? Isn't summer the middle of the growing season? Here's the truth my grandfather taught me. The calendar doesn't grow your food. The soil temperature does. And in July, the soil is warm, alive, and ready. Seeds that would have rotted in a cold spring bed will explode out of warm July ground in just days. Think about what spring really is. It's a fight. The nights are cold, the ground is heavy and wet, and every seed you drop in is gambling against a late frost. Half of what you plant in April sulks in the dirt, waiting for the world to warm up. But July has already won that fight for you. The battle you struggle through in spring is simply over by summer. My grandfather never owned a thermometer. He'd kneel down, push his bare hand into the dirt, and just feel it. If it was warm enough to sit comfortably, it was warm enough to plant. That simple test still works today. Try it in your own garden right now. Kneel down, dig your fingers in past the surface, and if the earth feels warm and welcoming instead of cold and clammy, your soil is telling you it's ready. There's a second reason July works. Fast crops. My ancestors always kept certain seeds set aside, not for spring, but for exactly this moment. Crops that race from seed to harvest before the first frost ever arrives. And here's the part most people never learned. Count backwards from your first frost. In most places, that first cold snap doesn't come until late September, October, sometimes November. That gives you 60, 70, even 90 days of growing left. That's an entire season hiding in plain sight, and almost nobody uses it. You see, my people never planted just once and prayed. We planted in waves, spring, midsummer, and even late summer. Always food coming in, right up until the cold. That's the secret the calendar makes you forget. My grandfather called it feeding the family in a line, not a lump. If you plant everything at once, everything comes ripe at once. And then you're drowning in tomatoes for 2 weeks and eating nothing the rest of the year. But if you plant a little now, a little in a few weeks, you eat steadily, all the way to winter. That patience is the whole art of it. So now let me give you the 3. Number 1, and this one is close to my heart. Bush beans. Now, my family grew beans the old way, climbing up corn stalks in what people now call the 3 Sisters. But for July planting when you're short on time, the humble bush bean is your fastest friend. Here's why beans are perfect for right now. They love warm soil. They germinate in 3 to 5 days in July heat. And many varieties go from seed to your plate in just 50 to 60 days. Plant today, and you're eating beans by early fall. But there's a deeper gift the beans give. My grandfather would put his finger in the dirt and say, "The beans feed the ground." He was right. Beans pull nitrogen out of the air and feed it into your soil, leaving it richer than they found it. That's why we never grew a crop just for the crop. We grew it for the crops that would come after it. The bean gives, and then it gives again, in the soil it leaves behind. When the plant is spent, my grandfather didn't yank it out and throw it away. He'd cut it at the ground and leave the roots in the earth, so all that nitrogen stayed right where the next plant would need it. To plant them, push each seed an inch or 2 deep, a hand's width apart, in a spot that gets full sun. water them well, and then trust the warm ground to do the rest. It will. And one more thing my father drilled into me. Pick your beans young and pick them often. The more you harvest, the more the plant produces. Leave the pods on too long, and the plant thinks its work is done, and it stops. A bean plant rewards the hands that visit it every single day. Now, number 2. This one thrives in the heat that makes other plants wilt. Summer squash, the second sister. In my family, squash was sacred. Its wide leaves shaded the ground, kept the soil cool and moist, and choked out the weeds so nothing else had to fight for the earth. The old people understood something modern gardeners are just now rediscovering. Those broad squash leaves are living mulch. They cover the bare ground so the sun can't bake it dry, so the rain doesn't pound it hard, and so the weeds never get the light they need to take hold. The plant protects the very soil it grows in, and squash loves July. It craves the long hot days. Direct sow the seed now, and in 50 days or less, you'll have zucchini and squash faster than you can give it away to your neighbors. My grandfather taught me to plant squash in little mounds, 3 or 4 seeds to a hill. He said the mound keeps the roots warm and lets the water drain, so the seed never drowns. Small wisdom, but it makes all the difference. Once the strongest 2 seedlings come up, he'd gently thin the rest, so the survivors got every drop of water and every ray of sun. And don't waste the blossoms. My grandmother would gather the golden squash flowers in the cool of the morning and cook them. Nothing on that plant went to waste. Not one thing. That was the way. The flower, the fruit, the seed inside it, and even the vines afterward, folded back into the garden to feed the ground. Give squash room. Full sun, rich soil, and space to sprawl. It's a generous plant, but a greedy one for space. Give it what it needs, and it will feed you for weeks. And like the beans, squash wants to be picked young. A zucchini, the length of your hand, is tender and sweet. Let it grow into a giant club and it turns tough, seedy, and the plant slows down. My father would say, pick it small and pick it often, and the vine will keep the gifts coming. And now, the third. This one is the surprise, because most people think its season is already over. Greens, but not the delicate spring lettuce that melts in the heat. I mean the tough, heat-tolerant greens my people relied on. Swiss chard, collards, kale, amaranth greens that our ancestors grew long before anyone here had ever heard of spinach. Amaranth especially. To my ancestors, it wasn't just a vegetable, it was a survival crop. The leaves you eat like spinach through the summer, and the seeds you harvest like grain in the fall. 1 plant, 2 harvests. It fed whole nations across this land for thousands of years, long before it was ever forgotten. And amaranth is nearly impossible to kill. It shrugs off the hottest, driest weeks of summer when everything around it is begging for water. My grandfather trusted it precisely because it never quit. In a hard year, when the tender crops failed, the amaranth was still standing tall, still feeding the family. Here's why greens are the smart July choice. They grow fast, some ready to pick in 30 days. And the ones I named actually laugh at summer heat where spring lettuce would give up and bolt. And there's a secret my father showed me. With chard, kale, and collards, you don't rip up the whole plant. You harvest the outer leaves and leave the center. That plant keeps giving you leaves for months. Cut and come again, he called it. Better still, these greens actually get sweeter as the weather cools. When that first light frost touches the collards and the kale in the fall, the plants turn their starches into sugars to protect themselves. My grandmother swore the greens after the first frost were the best of the whole year. And she was right. Sow the seeds shallow, just a quarter-inch deep, and keep them moist while they sprout. In July heat, a little afternoon shade helps them along. But once they're up, these greens are as tough as anything in your garden. And here's a trick for beating that July heat while the seeds are young. Tuck your greens into the cool shade beside your beans or beneath the sprawling leaves of your squash. The taller crops shelter the tender seedlings from the harshest afternoon sun, just the way the three sisters were always meant to protect one another. Every plant with a job, every plant helping the next. Now let me leave you with a few things my grandfather said about all three of these crops. Things that matter more in July than any other month. First, water deep, not often. The July sun is fierce, and a light sprinkle just teases the roots to stay near the surface where they'll cook. Water long and slow so the moisture sinks down, and the roots will chase it deep into the cool earth where the heat can't reach them. And water in the early morning, my grandfather always said, before the sun climbs high. Water at midday and most of it steams away before the roots ever drink. Water at night and the leaves stay damp too long and sickness creeps in. But water at dawn and the plant fills up cool and ready to face the heat of the day. Second, mulch the bare ground. Straw, dried leaves, grass clippings, anything you have. My people used what the land gave them. A blanket of mulch keeps the soil cool and holds the water in. And in the fierce heat of July, that can be the difference between a seed that lives and a seed that dries out and dies. And third, save your seeds. When these plants finish, let a few of the best ones go all the way to seed and gather them. That's how my family carried this knowledge across generations. Not just in words, but in the very seeds themselves, handed down season after season, hand to hand. So there they are, beans, squash, and greens. 3 crops you can still plant this July. 3 crops my family has trusted for more generations than anyone can count. But let me tell you the real secret, the one underneath all 3. It was never about any single plant. It was about listening to the land instead of the calendar. My grandfather never said the season was over just because a page turned. He said the season is over when the ground goes cold. And in July, the ground is far from cold. The way I see it, the land has been generous to my people for thousands of years, and it's still generous today to anyone willing to kneel down and pay attention. It doesn't care what month the calendar says. It only asks that you listen, that you work with it, and that you give back as much as you take. This knowledge was passed to me the same way it was passed to him. Hand to hand, word to word, and now I've passed it to you. That's how it stays alive. So go put your hand in the dirt, feel it, and plant something today. If this old knowledge spoke to you, plant one of these 3 this week, and let me know how it grows. Subscribe, and I'll keep sharing the secrets my family has kept for generations. Until then, keep your hands in the earth.